Introduction. Throughout this pandemic, the world has experienced a number of transformations in all ramifications. The human race now observes things differently due to the diversified evolution of almost everything, from industries to commerce to services and entertainment. Before the pandemic, the world of musical entertainment existed in two forms: the bands and labels and the individual musicians. The dual forms of musicians thrive and survive together based on the different demands of the people. However, the independent form had always been more challenging and less encouraging for musicians. It has evolved with several challenges and many peculiar limitations and conditions, resulting in it being a substitute to big label music. On the mainframe, listeners rally around big labels because of their popularity and the vast variety of musical genre they supply. Artists prefer to join a label than to stand alone. This has caused indie artists to be seen as inferior to the artists in big record labels. Indie artists are seen as subsidiaries or low-quality musicians who can't get into a label. Therefore, with exception of a select few popular individuals, the majority of pre-pandemic indie artists are thought to be hustlers searching for general acceptance by the public and record labels. They suffer prejudice, negligence, and underestimation by the audience and successful music artists. The pandemic caused the music industry to experience a general backslide. This turned out to be a blessing in disguise for indie artists who had been used to having little or no audience. The pandemic posed such a hindrance to the music movement that it even affected the production and promotion of music by big record labels. When the pandemic first hit, it was hard on musicians. Most bands had to stop work, and even labels found it difficult to operate a beneficial system. This standstill opened a door of opportunity for indie musicians who had to learn how to satisfy an audience that could no longer attend shows, performances, and parties. It was a period when the ground was somehow level for both record label musicians and individual musicians. Before the pandemic, the indie music world was experiencing a huge turnaround. Audiences and entrepreneurs had started paying attention to indie artists and their music, which was characterized by a very competitive spirit of professionalism, devotion, dedication, talent, and skill. In the last decade, indie music was enhanced by a society void of segregation and discrimination, one that was deeper and more concerned with the quality of service and entertainment. Apart from the demand for music, its popularity was driven by several opportunities it had brought entrepreneurs looking to derive a huge amount of economic positivity from the newly booming musical business. Chapter 1. The Evolution of Indie Artists. To completely understand the situation the music business is now, we need to understand its historical backdrop. There are three phases in the music business's advancement. The main phase is the live music industry. This phase traces back to the beginning of development and includes supporters watching performers play. The following phase is the music distributing stage, dating back to the 1600s, even though it was later in the 1800s that it became a business. In 1877, the phonograph was created by Thomas Edison, allowing live music to be recorded. This prompted a new time in music. The time of focusing all attention on the artist instead of the composer was over. This was the beginning of record labels, as arrangers and artists were brought together. As artists and collection agents worked together, the quality of music was enhanced, furthering the advancement of records. Later in the 20th century, record labels, as we currently know them, were developed. They depended on selling actual duplicates of music and not just on radio play. During the 80s, the CD emerged, which was another major changing point in the music industry. However, the biggest change occurred during the 90s, with the introduction of the Internet. Printed copies of music were no longer needed because of MP3s. To keep up with this advancement, members of the music audience began to change their music libraries over to MP3s. Yet another major transformation brought about by the Internet was through social media. Businesses and sites like MySpace and YouTube hugely affected CD and DVD sales. The Internet also changed how music was created. It was now easier than ever for artists to record and share their music on the web. There were negative impacts to this, particularly when piracy turned into an issue. Piracy, meaning that the music was downloaded wrongfully, was rampant on downloading sites like Napster and Pirate Bay. An examination by RIAA showed that Napster was responsible for the decline in CD sales from $14.6 billion to $7 billion yearly. Theft financially affected the music business. The introduction of the most well-known streaming outlet, Spotify, in 2006, decidedly affected the business, even though it may not be an ideal source for record labels. Studies show that computerized streaming makes up 62% of general music these days. Even though artists don't get paid a ton from streaming, it is superior to individuals downloading it free of charge. The music business has consistently been adjusting to new changes in the business world. Perhaps the greatest change throughout the music business's entire existence has been digitalization, as they move from an actual configuration to an advanced organization. With this, there was no clear or ideal direction for indie artists to advance. This pattern emerged during the 90s, when the development of music shifted towards the approach of advanced innovation. The accessibility of the computerized innovation and web meant it was now feasible for artists to record, produce, and market their music without having a record label. In the pre-advanced period, there was almost always a need for an artist to be endorsed with a record label before achieving any importance in the business. This was because of the limited processes and abilities that are consolidated in music production. The manual or simple instrumental techniques to record music is a huge undertaking for a solitary artist. Often, artists who produce music on their own turn out music with less quality than music delivered by huge labels. One could say there was just a single method of being an artist, that of being endorsed by a record label. Digitalization opened up different freedoms for artists. It created new outlets for music distribution, which enabled new ways for music audience members to find new artists. As digitalization gained momentum, indie artists began to emerge. There are countless genres of indie artist music. It ranges from indie pop, rock, traditional music, and even independent raised folk music from various parts of the world. During the 80s and 90s, to a great extent, indie artists were perceived as a different kind. Indie music was commonly thought of as an elective music type. The term indie artists stems from the word independent. The reasoning behind this is that the freedom a musician gained while creating music on there was so notable. They were, in fact, independent. The genuineness of an artist could really be showcased. During the 80s, groups like the Smiths in the UK and Sonic Youth in the USA took on the term of indie artists and began creating music. This was, for the most part, an indie artist post-troublemaker and musical gang time. Indie artists made space for upcoming valid artists. Regarding the music business today, indie artists now have many of the same opportunities to prevail as signed artists do. They have an alternate way to the top. The digital era and the indie artist. Digitalization has probably been the greatest test the music business has confronted with up until this point. It has made it feasible for artists to become famous without the associations and monetary help that would come with a record label. Not too long ago, a record label was the predominant power behind a fruitful artist. They were the ones who would represent the deciding moments of the artist. The record label determined how much cash and resources they put into advancing their artists. Now that so much of the business has moved towards advanced configurations, artists are easily able to exploit streaming outlets and other social media services to interface with members of their music audience. Due to famous social media outlets like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, artists can advance and offer their music to their fans with minimal effort. Recording music is now possible online without the assistance of a record label. The style that it was done in once upon a time, with costly sound hardware and the need of an artist, is now a distant memory. It has been replaced by online programming that makes recording conceivable without even being at a genuine studio. Selling a product can bring in a decent measure of income for an artist. Production and selling are now possible through the artist's site. Indie artists, also called unsigned artists, are artists that are not endorsed by a record label. This implies that the artist doesn't depend on a target coming from a record label. Rather, pay comes indirectly from the fan base. By not being restrained by a record label, Indie artists are able to chronicle and showcase different parts of the imaginativeness of life without anyone else. Throughout the past few decades, innovation has massively affected the music business. Initially, vinyl was the actual principal configuration for listening to music. From there, it shifted towards listening to music on tapes. After tapes, there was a massive change to plates. In 1999, an internet sharing assistance created by Sean Parker, John Fanning, and Sean Fanning, called Napster, was established. With this, music audience members were able to share their MP3 music records with different audience members. This ultimately prompted a few issues with robbery, with record labels and artists whining about how their music is being shared without making any profit on it. The music industry has seen many changes since those days. Now, artists are advancing social media transparently and urging their fans to utilize them. Bought CD deals and MP3 documents have declined as much as 20% yearly, whereas social media has more than 100 million clients. Despite the issues at the start of the unrest, in their own way, these kinds of outlets may have actually wound up saving record labels, as record labels had to quickly adapt. Labels are now prepared to make income by streaming memberships and ads on their artists' records. Digitalization has made it workable for another idea called indie artists to be a thing. New opportunities have opened for artists to earn enough to pay the bills without a record label's assistance. Chapter 2. Record Label and the Artists. Record labels are organizations that sell and record music. There are big record labels and indie record labels. Indie record labels are independently financed and not associated with any of the big three labels. The big three record labels today are Warner Music, Sony Music, and Universal Music. In the last 20 years, record labels have faced significant challenges within their industry, such as declining CD deals, piracy, and improved music approaches on the internet. With the introduction of streaming services, record labels are at last seeing a rise in their profit following quite a while of loss. The reason many artists might have not any desire to go with a record label anymore is because of how much power the label holds over the artist. Labels are known to set the terms of contracts and tightly control their artists. The record label will determine what type of music is released, how the music sounds, and even what the song verses ought to be. If the artist is successful, they will likely have more opportunities to renegotiate their contract to incorporate more ideal terms. As a way to remain relevant in the current industry, record labels are now offering so-called 360 bargains to artists, which permits them to get a cut of all the artist's work, including music deals, merchandise, and media appearances. The new trend in the business is that the artist stays with the record label for a more limited time than before. There is now greater adaptability with contracts between record labels and artists. Being an independent artist compared to signing to a record label. Do you want to go free or sign up a record deal? Become familiar with the benefits and impediments of delivering music as an indie artist versus signing with a record label. Independent artists versus signed artists. In the advanced music industry, it's easier than ever to deliver your music and assemble a music profession without a record label support. There are more indie artists than at any other time in recent memory, breaking into the standard without a label's help. Computerized music conveyance, streaming stages, social media, web-based promoting devices, and innovation progressions have changed how artists release music and arrive at fans. Eventually in your music career, you may wonder whether you should deliver music as an indie artist or sign an arrangement with a record label. This guide examines the advantages and disadvantages of delivering music as an indie artist versus signing with a record label. Releasing music as an independent artist. Here are the advantages and disadvantages of delivering music as an indie artist. The pros of self-releasing music. 1. 100% imaginative control. Independent artists have unlimited freedom over the heading of their music. They also have full command over appropriation, promoting, fine art, informing, cutoff times, and many other aspects of music production. Most importantly, an indie artist has the freedom to make their own choices about their imaginative vision. It's the ideal situation for some artists. 2. Keep 100% of the benefits. Indie artists keep 100% of the benefits produced from music deals, streams, authorizing arrangements, stock, and other income sources. 3. 100% responsibility for music. Independent artists own the expert rights to their music. They additionally have the opportunity to arrange music permitting and distributing bargains. Besides, they don't need to stress over befuddling contracts, costly attorneys, and giving up their music rights. 4. Online music administrations offered to independent musicians. The advanced period brings an assortment of music administrations and devices for indie artists. Artists can do their own music dissemination, promoting, web-based, stock production, and different administrations. The web additionally makes it easier for artists to connect with new audiences. They can now convey their music to advanced music stores, music stages, and real-time features without a record label's influence. The cons of self-releasing music. 1. Restricted assets and financial plan. Funding dominating, dissemination, promoting, stock, touring, and other music-related adventures are very costly. Numerous indie artists don't have the assets and money that a record label can give. 2. Restricted organization. Indie artists starting out in their music vocation have a limited organization of fans and industry contacts. Record labels will have a bigger fan base and associations with music industry experts like advertisers, booking artists, media, and so forth to draw from. 3. Restricted music business experience. Learning the ropes of the music business will be challenging. It requires some investment and experience to become familiar with all parts of the industry. There are a ton of variables to oversee, evolving patterns, music laws, and significantly more. It's an intricate world. It can also be a costly exercise to sort out what works and what doesn't. 4. Restricted time. Pursuing the indie artist course is tedious. Self-delivering your music is everyday work. It requires a ton of time to set up appropriation, make all the delivery resources, build up a showcasing methodology, track deals, book shows, and other things related to delivering music. This additional work can take away from important studio time. Releasing music with a record label. Here are the upsides and downsides of delivering your music with a record label. The pros of signing with a record label. 1. Accessible assets and spending plan. Established record labels have the assets and financing to offer help for dominating, appropriation, collection artists' production, advertising, stock, touring, music recording, and other costs. The financial plan and assets accessible rely heavily upon the label. 2. Existing organization and connections. One huge advantage of signing with a label is their current organization. It can introduce significant freedoms for you and your music. Without a record label, your organization and reach to bigger audiences can be restricted. Record labels will have a bigger fan base. They may also have connections with booking artists, music scenes, distributing organizations, PR organizations, and other music industry experts. 3. Notoriety and impact. Many record labels, particularly major labels, have a solid impact and associations in the music business. They are better situated to get authorizing and distributing bargains, showing bigger settings and celebrations, media inclusion, radio plays, and other privileges. 4. Executed showcasing procedure. Signing with a record label with a powerful advertising system will expand your music deals, help you arrive at new fans, and lift your music profession. A record label may have a huge email list, routinely send pamphlets, have a solid social media presence, music media backing, and then some. Moreover, a label will have music industry experience. The constraints of signing with a record label. 1. Restricted inventive control. Signing with a record label gives them power over your music. The record label can settle on arrangements and choices with your music without your endorsement. They also have full authority over dissemination, showcasing, art, informing, and the sky is the limit from there. The control over your music and brand relies upon the terms set in the agreement. 2. Fewer benefits. Record labels take a portion of the profits created from music deals, streams, authorizing bargains, and other income sources. Additionally, some labels utilize the eminences produced from music deals to pay for dominating, limited-time mailers, and different delivery costs. 3. Move of copyright possession. The record label claims the expert rights to your music when you sign an agreement. They have the opportunity to arrange music, permitting and distributing bargains without your endorsement. Accordingly, they can keep more benefits produced from these arrangements. 4. Terrible agreement bargains. Many independent record labels have well-disposed artist agreements. Major record labels have contract bargains that give the artist a lesser level of royalties. Signing with labels implies you need to manage these convoluted agreements and costly layers if necessary. Should you sign with a record label or go free? Each has its benefits and inconveniences. Artists, who need to hold the expert rights, keep 100% of the benefits, have total imaginative control, and are well-versed in the music business, may want to think about going free. Indie labels versus major labels. Pros, cons, differences, and which label is right for you. Indie record labels are among some of the top record labels on the planet and offer various advantages to a significant degree. There are both benefits and drawbacks of signing to indie labels. We'll cover the upsides and downsides of indie record labels so that you can work out what agreement is best for you. Lately, numerous artists have moved towards signing with independent labels. For some, it's a more sensible approach, and there are benefits of signing with a smaller, independent label. Indie record label differences. The term indie artist, free, is applied to any music label that works outside the circle of record label partnerships. With the independent label, they are characterized and they may be independently financed. Indie artists contrast significantly in size and limit. They can range from little groups of staff with 1 or 2 individuals working in a shared office to possibly 20 or 30 individuals in offices all over the country. There are also usually little, medium, and huge free thinkers. While major labels work on a worldwide scale, with their dissemination and distributing offices, indie artists regularly enroll outside organizations to give their worldwide conveyance and distributing administrations. Do artists actually require record labels? There are a number of developing artists that are gaining success without a record label, although this does not mean that they don't have a group behind them that works like a record. Record labels utilize individuals from staff across these offices: artist and repertoire, sales, marketing, promotion, product management, new media, production, finance, business affairs, legal, international, sync. A few artists may feel that they needn't bother with a record label. Having a group covering these regions can have a monstrous effect on worldwide achievement. Generally, even though we live in a period where record labels may not be as fundamental, there is a need for skilled groups and essential administrations to help make artists significant progress. Benefits and weaknesses of indie record labels. Who holds the rights to the music? One significant advantage to working with an indie artist's label is that artists regularly will hold the rights to their songs. This is particularly critical, given the expanding potential to adapt the music by synchronizing it in different types of media. In any case, you should possess the full rights to a song to have the option to guarantee the benefits from any permitting charges. The enormous business approach of major record labels implies that they, as a rule, guarantee the rights to the music of their artists and will gather the benefits from any authorizing expenses. Hence, the performer gets only a small part of the benefits. The artist's influence over their work. Since indie artists are more modest partnerships run by fewer people, compared to major record labels, they are not obligated to the plans of a huge top managerial staff, propelled basically to produce music that will perform. If you are offered an agreement with an indie artist's label, it's most likely because they put stock in your remarkable image, not because they need to pipe and form your picture to fit the standard market. Artists working with enormous scope partnerships regularly have less inventive power over their music and picture. This can be a significant issue for the individuals who focus on their believability as a performer over monetary achievement. Relationships within the team. Indie artists have far fewer performers on their books than major record organizations, so they can, as a rule, bear to allot every one of their artists a committed delegate, who will work intimately with them however long they're endorsed with the organization. The disadvantage of working with a more modest group is that you'll have less aptitude available to you. More modest labels will have less business impact on the business. Artist-friendly contracts. Indie labels have gained notoriety for offering contracts that are favorable to artists, frequently with bigger eminence rates for the artist, and by and large, giving artists better incentive for their work. Then again, major record labels are undeniably more business-orientated and will push to extract the most cash from their artists by offering artists a more modest bit of any profit they produce. The scale of production. The music industry's biggest labels have set up incredible associations and had a tremendous impact during their times of being on top. With more modest labels, artists may think that it's harder to stand out, enough to be noticed by media distributions. Major labels with so many artists work on such a huge scope that it may be very hard for newcomers to stand out enough to be noticed, particularly if their music isn't quickly showing success. The size of the financial plan. The most significant disadvantage of utilizing an independent label is that it is almost certain they will have a much more modest spending plan for recording, production, dissemination, and promoting. This implies that artists regularly need to put additional time and energy into self-advancement if they want to get maximum exposure. Undeniably, major record labels have more financing available to them. This financing can be utilized to support top-quality account offices, worldwide advancement and conveyance, such as music video shoots and world tours. These are high costs that indie record labels frequently can't subsidize. The size of advances. Advances are adequately advanced. The artist gets an amount of cash from the record organization at the start of their agreement. However, this money is recovered by the record label from the royalties procured by the artist before any eminences are passed on to the artist. Major record labels are normally going to offer greater advances than more modest indie record labels, although the size of the advance will vary drastically, dependent upon the specific label's size and alliance. As opposed to offering a development, indie record labels regularly consent to cover a part of the account costs. However, this production credit is recovered by the record label before the artist gets any royalty pay. The benefit of having little to no development funding is that artists can begin benefiting from eminences more rapidly. In any event, as the brand recovers numerous costs before an artist sees any profit, the sole monetary award the artist receives is always a creation over and over again. Free goods deals. The term free merchandises alludes to the records that labels need to offer to retailers as a way to advance the collection before the delivery. It's essential to consider the effect of the free merchandise course of action, as artists will not receive any royalties from records given free of charge. Major record labels employ sufficient impact to restrict the quantity of free merchandise they are required to give. More modest record organizations will need to part with more records to advance their artists, decreasing the potential benefit an artist can procure in eminences. Occasionally, indie labels need to promote their artist's song for accumulation CDs to make a grandstand of their performer's work. These arrangement CDs can also be given away at no cost as promotions. Indie artists can't anticipate any monetary remuneration for their work in these situations. Publishing. Publishing involves asserting and benefiting from the permit to the actual song, the verses and arrangement, instead of simply a specific account. Most agreements offered by major record labels do exclude distributing, as major labels regularly have associated distributing organizations for their artists to work with. Independent agreements ordinarily request that the label gets distributing rights to their artist's music. Typically, the artist is offered 50% of whatever pay the distributor gets from permitting charges as a trade-off for the label possessing the distributing permit. Co-distributing bargains are normal among indie artist labels. This is where the artist and the distributor co-own the copyrights. The artist gets a concurred level of the pay created from their song. Merchandise. Indie labels are likely to demand the marketing rights, as their need to begin earning money from their artists quickly is significant. As big record labels have greater spending plans, you could wind up with a more extensive product line. Some artists with major record labels have even started their own style lines after signing with a record label. Why the rise of indie labels? The customary design of major record labels have made them battle against the ascent of social media, just as they have with the advancement of music retail and the resulting decrease in the prevalence of radio and actual collection deals. Consequently, the organizations that once hoarded the business have been forced to change as they progress towards the more current strategies spearheaded by independent labels. The ascent of advanced online circulation has likewise helped new indie artists acquire conspicuousness. In the past, only big traders or record labels could help you get your music in physical and specialized stores. There are currently many advanced aggregators, like DistroKid and TuneCore, that anybody can access. These aggregators will put your music on stages like Spotify and Apple Music in return for royalties or a membership expense. How to decide? Numerous artists on big record labels start their careers as indie artists, so don't feel pressured to sign with a major label. These artists have had the option to create their fanbase at their speed in less compressed conditions and have switched over to the majors when prepared. Some indie labels will even deliver music for their successful artists in association with record labels. This is because some indie artists become so fruitful with an indie label that the two players consent to an arrangement to grow the group and augment achievement. There are some basic contrasts in the manner indie labels are run compared with major record labels. It merits educating yourself on these distinctions before deciding to pursue one or the other. Determining your needs as an artist and what kind of signing will best assist you will help in achieving your professional objectives. Chapter 3. Challenges of Indie Artists. Professional challenges of indie artists. Indie artists are confronted with various difficulties because of the lonely nature of their work. As expected, artists who are not endorsed by any record label need to accomplish such a great deal throughout the process of producing their music that it frequently has lesser quality when compared with the production of record labels. This in itself is an expert test, and it can incredibly affect the audience view of independent music and artists. Working in an imaginative or creative field requires tough skin, and the music business is no exception. Performer, director, artist, or advertiser, they all experience changes. The trick is figuring out how to manage dissatisfaction and proceeding to push toward your objectives without becoming diverted. Realizing how to deal with these regular events can help you stay zeroed in on your profession. Here are some normal difficulties faced by indie artists during the time spent doing their music. Poor reputation and zero popularity. Indie artists are for the most part seen as forthcoming, endeavoring, or attempting until they are endorsed into record labels. In most pessimistic scenarios, they may be viewed as disappointments with low self-esteem, making it difficult for them to be endorsed by a record label. This bias can lead to alienation by the audience and other fellow artists. Hence, the independent artist has lesser chances of being heard when contrasted with artists in record labels. Likewise, an independent artist has a low standing because they have none of that support that a record label would offer them, such as prepared constructed notoriety and an audience. When they start and are independent, they have no group to help advance them, so they start without being known or assessed by anybody. They may keep making mistakes for quite some time without getting any feedback corrections from the audience or anyone else. In record labels, advancements are finished by a group that spends significant time on it. This would normally support the notoriety of the new member and procure them a prepared audience. Indie artists don't have the advantage of these, so they rummage in the huge show's passage and take advantage of minuscule lucky breaks, regardless of how small, to advance themselves. Indie artists, in this sense, have to work twice as hard as their peers in record labels who have received a large portion of the fame and notoriety. Not knowing their qualities and shortcomings. Artists are notorious for claiming that their work is a piece of amazing artistry and that it should not be meddled with. However, the best artists, entertainers, and competitors understand there is always room for improvement, as they seek feedback and useful analysis from others. They endeavor to be the best and decline to show the world anything but that. To incorporate this into your work, continuously ask an effective lyricist their opinions about your songs. search out a regarded live performer, or even better, a presentation mentor, to study your live shows. Ask them for feedback and listen to it. Recruit an accomplished blend engineer and ask for another set of ears to tune into your songs before you get them dominated and squeezed. They could very well discover small imperfections that can make improvements that will change the music's sound to improve things. An example of this would be extraordinary vocalists who demand to play their instruments, however, is only mediocre at playing. Artists who receive poor or low feedback from next to no audience and have no group to guide or call attention to their qualities and shortcomings can find it very difficult to improve their abilities or spotlight their qualities. This has the potential to prevent their prosperity significantly and may even destroy their music career before it begins. If you have not yet gotten a reaction to your music demo, don't be discouraged. It can take some time for your demo to contact the ideal individual. You can improve your odds of receiving a successful reaction by following some essential guidelines. Keep building your profile by playing shows. Pursue press inclusion of your shows. Keep your promotion bundle refreshed. Stay up to date on your social media presence and write early and regularly on your blog and social media pages. Remember that numerous groups have encountered demo frustration and have still ended up successful. Finding out that a review of your collection or band that was expected in the paper or online has been dropped can be baffling. This frequently happens and is nothing to worry about. Even though a reviewer may say that their article will show up, they don't have the last say, as an editorial manager could drop it. Having your review drop for a bigger story is normal, so be set up to be proactive and follow up. Call your contact at the distribution to discover what occurred and inquire about whether they can run your review in a following issue. If your expected review was reported on your site or by your wholesaler to advance your collection, get in contact with everybody to figure out what occurred and ask when the review will be published. In many examples, there's no assurance a review will be distributed. You can still build your press abilities and develop relationships with essayists who are fans of your music. Undoubtedly, artists and record labels get a significant degree of direction from individuals with the record label and a greater volume of criticism and surveys from the audience. Thus, it is simpler for indie artists to make errors. It is a loosely held bit of information that hopeful artists can crash and burn on their appearances. However, true growth lies in having the ability to learn from missteps and defeat them with effortlessness. While certain mistakes may, at the time, seem like the apocalypse, they can actually be seen as stepping stones. As frequent as awful days are for indie artists, they can be used to help them change and become more adaptable in the music industry. Producing and mixing by themselves. Whether it's because of a lack of money or simply a solid sense of self, numerous artists want to create their own songs. Indie artists frequently need to do their own production without help from anyone else, having to do so without many of the vital requirements needed for proficient production. Some indie artists often have to familiarize themselves with the basic skills of production, as time wouldn't permit them to become fully informed on all aspects. Being the artist and also having to invest so much energy in recording the melodies can truly bore your ears. This regularly brings about an exceptionally underdelivered and inert music, or an overcreated blend of sounds. It is often beneficial to have a second or even third pair of new ears to help maintain the balance, flux, and energies on a regular basis. Also, an accomplished producer will draw out the absolute best in you even when you didn't realize that there was an opportunity to get better. Attracting potential fans by performing at local venues. Some of the top artists, including the Beatles, got their start by performing locally, utilizing flyers and getting their names in newspaper articles. However, many other artists utilized a similar technique and never succeeded. They may become well known in their general vicinity and be offered certain perks, such as free beverages from the nearby bars and restaurants and so forth. Sadly, that is often the extent of it. The day local people become bored of the artist's dreams will be broken. Indie artists consider the bars and gatherings as an opportunity to sell their talent and gain a following. This doesn't always happen smoothly. Audiences lose interest in a specific style of music regularly. The shows, gatherings, and bars do not provide regular compensating for artists. They may be viewed as stars for a while, but whenever a new artist gets the chance to perform, they may quickly become replaced. Few things are as debilitating to artists as playing to a vacant room on the evening of a gig. While there might be reasons for the low turnout, the reality is you can't force individuals to go to your show. The best strategy is to give a valiant effort to transform a negative into a positive. Be generous to everybody engaged with the show so that you will be invited back to the setting later. There's no assurance that the groups will pound down the entryway sometime later. However, you can find ways to construct buzz for that next show. When beginning, groups frequently work with advertisers who might be unpracticed and just put on shows for no particular reason. With inexperienced managing advertisers, there is always the possibility that they could drop your gig with very little notice. Get ready for the unavoidable dropped show and push ahead. Regardless of whether things go as planned, always make sure to be amiable and generous with everybody, as you may require their assistance later on. Low budget and financial constraints. For an artist or band without the help of a major record label, even having enough money to have a nice dinner out may be a stretch. Productive music instruments are expensive. This wouldn't make any difference to artists endorsed under a major record label. For an indie artist or band, the sole expense of whatever they need to procure for recording, mixing, and production is on them. They also need to come up with the cash to go to shows and exhibitions on their own. In some cases, they even need to pay to be permitted to perform without any assurance of monetary benefit. Throughout the year, indie artists need to attend a number of places, meet various individuals, and lease various scenes for shows. This is an immense monetary burden on a free impending performer who has no royalty or payment coming from anywhere. Artists need to be paid for their work. However, royalty collection organizations can contrarily influence fans. From attempting to gather extra expenses on music for which they've effectively been redressed, for example, with ringtones, to requesting that fans pay for a public presentation permit when tuning into their music on the radio, the activities of these organizations appear to be more equipped to fixing their own monetary issues than ensuring artists get their due. Besides, the way you pay a charge for a royalty collection organization's administration is something that the general population doesn't understand. Fans do not realize that you have little power over what the organization does in your name. To them, the artist is the greedy one, and that is not an impression artists want to leave with their fans. The web gives numerous chances for music advancement, and fair licensing regulations and royalties should be in place. Music rights holders should create a sensible arrangement for authorizing and paying with sites with advanced music. Artists and labels do not always agree with the Recording Industry Association of America's file-sharing lawsuits. Many have revolted against them, feeling that they damage the connection between performers and fans. Sadly, fans who are not educated about who is suing them for sharing music may believe it to be their number one performer. The RIAA's activities do little to diminish downloading. However, they do leave an awful impression of the music business in the public's eye. The United States is one of the only places on the planet which does not have to pay royalties to entertainers through earthbound radio. The Reasonable Play Fair Pay Act, H.R. 1733, presented in the U.S. House of Representatives in April 2015, would have changed this. However, it won't ever go through. Another issue is that most artists hope to have their audience see them as living a lavishing and luxurious lifestyle. They have very little desire to live a substandard life. Artists generally attempt to set up an extravagant way of life to draw in a group of people from the tasteful reach. This can result in disaster. As a hopeful artist, you will have to disregard rich ways of life. Be prepared that living within the means that your music provides requires a lot of difficult work and tolerance. However, the sacrifice can be very rewarding. A good idea is to work with your bank to adjust and deal with your expenses. Digital marketing challenges of indie artists. Getting fans is positively simpler in the computerized age, yet that doesn't mean promoting is simple. Indie artists need to follow some essential advertising fundamentals so that they will be able to capitalize on their promoting endeavors. Here are 15 of the greatest music promoting mistakes independent artists make. 1. Utilizing hype on social media. Such a large number of indie artists guide individuals in their calls to action however neglect to get transformations. For instance, look at my new single. Hottest new rap artist spitting real life, yo, check him out now. Donate to our Kickstarter campaign. The publicity via social media is pretty much as pointless as screen entryways on a submarine. What you ought to do is making it about the beneficiary. Say something like, "Goodness, thank you for the follows, #grateful. I need you to have a free download of my first single." When somebody draws in, you react with a comparable message. Your change rates will skyrocket, and individuals will start to let your songs in. This is a social media transformation of paraverbal correspondence. Paraverbal correspondence refers to messages communicated through the tone, pitch, and pacing of a voice. It is the way something is said, not what is said, along the lines of, "I didn't say you were moronic." "I didn't say you were moronic." "I didn't say you were stupid." 2. Approaching people to pay for discovery. Envision a late-night infomercial getting going with, "Just $19.99. You'll find it difficult to believe just how big it is. Let the charging cards out." Asking for the cash first and then trying to get audiences excited for what the item is usually not successful. Would you watch it? Would you care? I frequently see tweets that say something like, "Find us on iTunes," or "Download our first single for 99 cents. Indie artists are confused, thinking that parting with music is debasing it, and great business signifies continually gathering cash. Yet how often have you paid to find an artist in your life? Consider your favorite artist. How did you discover them? Most likely you heard them on the radio, a friend turned you on to them, or you paid to see a featuring act that you were already familiar with and were wonderfully surprised by the introduction to the new artist. Without earthbound radio, showcasing implies you must get individuals keen on you and genuinely engaged with your imaginative excursion before you ask them for the money. In basic deal terms, you need to fabricate want first. 3. Likes equating and follows strong links. Likes and consequences are not stable links, forms, or arrangements at all. If you request cash after a like or follow, it's equivalent to meeting somebody at a party, giving them your CD, and then requesting $1. Can you imagine doing that? "Hello, I'm Johnny D. Here's my CD. You will cherish it. That will be $10. It's pretty clear that will not work, and it doesn't work via social media. The like or a follow resembles a handshake after a presentation. If you've done any touring, you realize it's simply not possible to remember everybody you meet. Something different needs to occur for you to remember an individual fan, isn't that so? For this to happen, you must take the relationship to the next level when organizing via social media, and plan something to make a memorable fan. 4. Selling. An excessive number of indie artists request cash or promotion themselves via social media with each post. This is what could be compared to advanced begging. You must give so you can receive. Instead, show content that is centered around first creating intrigue with potential fans. Please give them the single. Present a call to action at that point about each fourth post. 5. Thinking radio will break you. See, I get it. Each artist I love while I was growing up was promoted using the radio. That is the place where many of you probably found your number one artist, and that is surely where their music was crashed into our mind enough to get comfortable after we found them. It makes sense. That is the way you would mold your showcasing plan since it worked previously. Yet, radio isn't powerful for uncovering indie artists. Furthermore, regardless of whether you had $1 million to spend on a P1 radio mission, individuals have Wi-Fi in the vehicle. They will change the channel when confronted with a new song to track their most loved ones because they can. While there are consistently special cases for the standard, I submit to you that no new artists have broken on rock or pop radio over the most recent 5 years. Any artist with their absolute first single on the radio over the most recent 5 years broke on YouTube, American Idol, The X Factor, The Voice, TV show soundtracks, or some medium. Only after that point did the radio begin playing them. Spend your money putting your promotional content in front of a targeted set of eyes. Spend your cash on a PR launch for your record to get some important press you can use for social proof. Put your money towards either an organization that can help you discover your audience via social media, or figuring out how to do it without anyone's help. 6. Not offering bundles in your web store. Let's face it, many of you hopeful artists don't have a web store, which is not wise. Essentially, you are giving away 30% of your well-deserved income to an organization when you could keep it all yourself. To those of you that do have a web store, kudos. However, chances are you do not offer bundles. By doing so, you have the potential to increase purchases and upsell by 30%. That is, as long as there is something for them to buy. 7. Ignoring YouTube. YouTube is most likely the greatest showcasing resource accessible to you, and barely any of you are utilizing it. Those of you who are not posting recordings regularly. YouTube is your private TV organization. Utilize it. 8. Not marketing. Tragically, most independent artists spend all of their money making the record and $0 showcasing it. If any money is put into promoting it, it is squandered and proportionately topsy-turvy. Great music has only very seldom tracked down its own audience naturally. Somebody, some way or another, was placing the artist's work before the correct gathering of individuals to make a little fire in the grassroots. If you got a record agreement tomorrow, the label would spend around 10% of your complete spending making the record and 90% advancing it. Have a go at changing your financial plan to closer to this and see what happens, even if it means only recording one song. 9. Not asking the right questions. Such a large number of you are asking yourselves, how might I get my music to the correct business individual so I can make it? Or, how would I get my shot at distinction? The questions indie artists ought to ask are, who is my audience? Where do I go to meet them? How do I get connected to them? How do I make them genuinely adapt to my music? Where can I familiarize myself with the right queries? Where do I find the answers to my questions? Such an extensive amount of the showcasing data you require is accessible through your PC, and it's generally free. All that is missing is a decent, imaginative mentality about the task, some training to guide you, and the desire to begin. You're ingenious, and when you truly choose to get going, you'll fire away. 10. Being inconsistent. Most indie artists are not consistent with social media promoting. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, and all social media stages require diligence, continuity, and content. If I somehow happen to grow a customer's record without adding content, the followers will soon unfollow because there isn't anything to enjoy. It would resemble going to a gathering where the host never appears, so no one has mixed drinks and there's no music playing. See ya! You need to provide ordinary, reliable, and valuable content, or you will risk losing fans, no matter how enthralling your music is. 11. Not engaging your audience. The times of the mysteriously great singers have been gone for a long while now. Indie artists need to connect with every individual who is interested in them. People respect greatness. However, they require more than having just met an artist through their gadgets. Often, when you meet somebody, they will not remember what you said to them as much as how you made them feel. Understanding that and using it to your advantage will quickly change your fans' reactions. 12. Not annotating your YouTube videos. Listeners will not buy if you don't ask them to. They will not download that free single if you don't request. You get 80% of what you want throughout everyday life by asking for it, so why not do it? The most terrible thing that could happen is they say no, yet at that point, since it's social media, you'll be able to manage the dismissal. All the required info for this is in the YouTube group Makers. 13. Thinking you own the information. You don't possess the data. Try not to trick yourself. Even if every one of your preferences and follows are from your genuine fans, you still don't possess that data. Someone will charge you to get to that information eventually if they haven't already. It can help you if you routinely exchange free downloads in return for email addresses and telephone numbers. 14. Providing social proof of your accomplishments. Here are some things to consider. Most of you are not setting up sufficient social proof, no doubt, since you would rather not come across as gloating. You're putting it up inaccurately and you appear to be gloating. Social proof is whatever demonstrates you really are accomplishing something and that others are into it. This incorporates audits, interviews, fan feedback, and messages. Instead of posting, "I'm magnificent, look at me," which is boasting, why not show a positive review or fan message? The emotional challenges faced by indie artists, having to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. As an individual artist who is striving to balance a budget between lifestyle and music career without funding or support from a record label, it can be incredibly challenging and discouraging. It often turns out that artists in this condition have to devote most of their time to multiple jobs to earn money for equipment. This is a very draining adventure, as artists don't have enough time for mental rest, planning, reflection, meditation, and even basic needs, such as having a nice breakfast or a deserving rest after a hectic day. This also has an impact on how the music turns out, due to less time to record and engage efficiently in the production processes. Generally, it becomes arduous and boring for the artists and drives them to the edge emotionally. Constant scrutiny for not having a real job. As mentioned earlier, individual artists often suffer prejudice and discrimination for failing or refusing to get signed to a record label. They are often viewed as scavengers coming second to the stage of music, after their reputed successful counterparts who belong to prestigious record labels. Most indie artists are not very popular, so they are generally considered as upcoming and alternative or subordinate to artists and record labels. They strive consistently to not only earn a sense of belonging among artists, but to qualify for public acceptance and acknowledgement by the audience. They have to constantly prove themselves to be extraordinary and exceptionally talented, and consistently attempt to change the public view about them. They have to deny the prejudice and undeserved poor reputation that they suffer for not belonging with a record label. Rising as an individual artist can be very difficult, with an outlook that makes one look like a loner. However, consistency and determination are virtues that even the public cannot ignore. Subsequently, a determined indie artist can become an accepted part of society and acquire his own audience and fans. The inconsistency of relevance. Indie artists who perform in shows, parties, bars, or even via digital scenes such as social media like YouTube, Instagram, often have to settle for an inconsistent fame. To be known and celebrated for only while the show lasts can be an emotional poison to independent artists. Artists can get the fans cheering, shouting, lip-syncing, or raping their lyrics while a show is ongoing. This moment offers them the light that they all strive for and the glory they all crave. However, the feeling is short-lived. The moment the curtain is drawn, attentive artists might even overhear the audience on the street talking about their brilliant performance, while trying to remember their names or commenting on how great the show was without mentioning the impacts of the artists. Artists who use the digital channel might also trend for a while on social media while their show is ongoing, but become rarely mentioned topics after the show. This irregularity of fame is challenging, as it puts such artists in an emotional struggle for balance and assurance in the view of the audience. They often spend a great deal of time questioning the reality of their relevance and acceptance to the public, the audience, and their fans. It also causes them anticipation and anxiety as they impatiently await the next show, and are not definitely sure if the audience still remembers them or would listen to them with the same enthusiasm and energy as the last time they performed. As an individual artist, this is the kind of fame you experience in the beginning until you are able to capture the heart of the audience and establish a strong bond that makes them crave the sound of your music. Constant feeling of confusion and self-doubt. Most indie artists have to be the judge of their own performances and often condemn themselves rather than commend themselves. Artists or bands that receive low feedback, poor reviews, and criticism have to do it all by themselves. In most cases, they doubt themselves and are almost always confused about their strengths and weaknesses. They often condemn themselves and blame themselves for failure to be signed by record labels or by accepted by the general audience. Since they consistently try different forms or approaches to music without being sure of which one would turn out better, they lack assurance in themselves and often feel they are not good in any aspect of music. However, it is a waste of time trying every niche of music. Artists need to look for the niche they are good at, focus on that, and develop it. That will bring success. Feelings of depressions, loneliness, and suicidal thoughts. Indie artists who constantly face challenges and suffer limitations are often depressed. From the physical pains of having to do so much by themselves to the mental realization that they literally have no support to rely on, they can end up regretting their situations and condemning themselves. In extreme cases, artists become overwhelmed by the situation and often get tired of the whole process. Along the line, they might lose a sense of significance, relevance, and purpose in life. With so many clogs in the wheels of their musical career and poor or mostly zero recognition by the public, they can lose their sense of purpose and might even attempt to end their own lives. After making a huge mistake or experiencing failure without any insurance backup or record label to financially and emotionally support them, indie artists often give up their music careers and, in extreme cases, their own lives. Artists need to understand that failure can be thought of as one step closer to success. When artists can find learning opportunities in their failure and find a way to progress from it, these failures can end up being something positive. Stay positive. Even though breaking into the music business as an indie artist can be debilitating, know that the challenges are normal and that numerous other artists have encountered them in their ascension to success. With the correct information and steadiness, you can turn into a fruitful musician. Chapter 4. The COVID-19 Effects on Indie Musicians. The significant pattern of late has been the fast growth of streaming sites, fundamentally global, example Spotify, Apple Music, as the essential dispersion technique. Savage rivalry for a piece of the overall industry among the enormous music distribution media has kept membership costs low, partially bringing about amazingly low revisitations of the rights holders when contrasted with actual deals. Discoverability is the way to expanding interest for artists and music determinations in the streaming climate. At the beginning of music streaming, Canada had a major slack among its peers, yet the extent of streaming incomes has immediately increased with worldwide figures. Today, it has the lion's share, 69%, of the income from recorded music. In a recent report, 75% of the recorded music was credited to the 3 worldwide major labels, leaving the rest to the Canadian free music era. Since the music streaming world doesn't favor indie artists who are not major brands and accordingly notable, their future, even without COVID, would have been a challenge. In March of 2020, the world started to take far and wide protection measures against the spread of the novel COVID-19 virus through movement limitations, isolations, and constraints on social gatherings. These limitations brought about the quick shutting down of numerous organizations, including show venues, and prompted the abrupt end to live music shows across Europe and the United States. This had significant ramifications for touring bands, as groups procure a large portion of their pay via touring. Many found themselves in a circumstance where they encountered considerable monetary misfortunes, coupled with the consequence of negative feelings. Artists reported negative emotional and financial consequences because of COVID-19. However, they also saw real support from indie music fans that made the pandemic's aftermath less serious. The reason why independent concert venues were particularly in danger was because they were among the first organizations to close because of the pandemic. They were among the last to resume because they relied on big social gatherings. These places have zero income without shows, regardless of having accumulated bills to pay. The capacity to open at the halfway limit was not economical, since most costs related to shows are fixed. Concert venues generally couldn't completely return until some point in 2021, bringing about a loss of $9 billion in ticket deals alone. The pivotal impact on the music industry in March and April 2020. Numerous indie artists rely on tours for money, either as their sole pay or as a subsidiary to other styles. Other than this monetary reliance, performing live can significantly improve performers' emotional prosperity, which is of significance in the local indie music area, given that indie artists and fans regularly have more elevated levels of psychological wellness conditions than everybody. The abrupt idea of mandated event cancellation, including the declaration that flights from Europe to the United States would be censored or monitored, left numerous bands in an appalling situation. These groups quickly ended up in at least one of these circumstances. 1. A tour that they had effectively started had been stopped suddenly. 2. A tour that they had effectively put resources into had unexpectedly been dropped, as well as 3. The band confronted the danger of being isolated in an outside country with limited funds because of abrupt travel limitations. The aftermath of every one of these three situations is discussed in detail in this chapter. The impacts on touring indie musicians. Coronavirus has significantly affected the music business, especially indie music. Live music has to a great extent ended across Canada, making a vacuum for many free music settings, bars, and celebrations, and a huge number of experts, artists, and support staff. The effect on live shows was similarly felt downstream on every individual who works for live shows, including administrators, advertisers, artists, bookers, and so on. Labels that masterminded 360 arrangements, i.e. the individuals who have upheld advertising, advancement, and touring in return for a level of their artist's income, just as record labels who have enhanced their activities with the board tasks, have both felt the consequences of the live music stoppage. Impacts were considerably more significant for those struggling indie artists and arising artists who had yet to find an audience. With live music being hindered, indie artists and managers have had fewer chances of establishing a fan base. In that sense, COVID-19 has exacerbated this prior challenge for indie music. Also, industry meetings show that those who were previously more avoided or underrepresented, like females, indigenous, black and people of color artists, and business visionaries, appear to have been hit the hardest. Shows and tours can be troublesome for touring indie artists, as they frequently require them to live in close quarters, travel in vans, and have very little downtime. Access to showers and restrooms can be rare, and artists usually are traveling on very restricted and uncertain budgets. The touring way of life requires numerous long periods of travel and the persistent difficulties that accompany changing time zones. Regardless of this, numerous artists love touring and playing live because of the serious and positive responses they experience when they play their music live. Fans will energetically cheer, dance, and buy band music. On top of the challenges touring artists typically experience, they are now encountering more difficulties because of COVID-19. The clearest way that COVID-19 could affect a musician is if they get infected. There are also consequences that are more subtle and enduring for touring artists, regardless of their exposure to infection. These include monetary and inwardly. Emotional ramifications. Touring artists saw their performances arrive at a sudden stop as the prohibitions on all unimportant travel, the restrictions on public gatherings, and the end of certain organizations, including venues for concerts, made for an inescapable failure to play music before live audiences. Money-related issues aren't really anything new for indie touring artists, but what is strange is the degree to which the COVID-19 circumstance affected touring indie artists inwardly. Musicians found themselves unable to rehearse with their groups, unable to tour, and not able to play before the audiences that they so worshipped. For some performers, playing live is a wellspring of incredible joy and a great way to connect with their fans. It provides both comfort and a soothing escape from everyday stress. It is an important part of why they decide to be artists. Situation summary and recommendation. Coronavirus is probably going to have a lasting effect across numerous nations, societies, and occupations. There is proof that the widespread effect of the virus and the subsequent quarantines and closures brought about an inauspicious condition of vulnerability for touring indie artists, their booking organizations, and advertisers, and more extensive networks that were reliant on show settings to enhance nearby businesses. The closure of organizations, including concert places, had happened because of the restrictions on public gatherings trying to control the virus's spread. It was not clear the number of venues that would endure these closures, and if artists knew about the circumstances. The scope of COVID-19 was wide-reaching and forced quarantines and closures of unnecessary organizations around the world. This was made evident in interviews with touring artists, advertisers, booking offices, and record label workers. Further understanding into the numerous challenges that the music business confronted following the early months of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic was shown in the increasing number of GoFundMe and Kickstarter pages. Touring artists that unexpectedly had their tours dropped, either in the middle of a tour or before even starting, experienced huge monetary misfortunes because of non-refundable tour expenses, travel, and pre-printed stock. The loss of performing live denied artists a major therapeutic outlet, typically provided by their music occupations. Many artists struggled with anxiety as they faced uncertainty about when they could perform live once more. These challenges reached out to different music business zones, as up to 90% of music settings confronted lasting closures. The people associated with booking shows, including band directors, advertisers, and booking offices, also saw misfortunes quickly following the COVID-19 outbreak. They were faced with questions about when a normal return to music and performances would happen. In March and early April of 2020, performers were starting to feel the beginning of the monetary and emotional aftermath following the underlying spread of the pandemic and subsequent 32 quarantines. At that point, when the music industry was encountering was considerable. Bands had lost a lot of money because of rashly finished tours, travel costs, and a wealth of unsold product. Their booking organizations also had non-refundable costs from those equivalent tours. These groups confronted vulnerability about when they would have the option to continue performing and keep up tour-based pay. Chapter 5. Standing Firm Against the Odds in Post-Pandemic Era. Surviving as an indie artist is like trying to survive in desert without water. It is quite an arduous adventure for an individual or a band. The pre-pandemic challenges have been strengthened and aggravated by the pandemic, and this has led to a very pessimistic outlook of the future of upcoming and new independent artists in the music industry. However, no matter how challenging a situation might be, it is important for an individual to focus on the lesson and positive sides of the situation. Lamenting or complaining about the situation or loss would not only hinder the person from moving forward, but also damage the spirit of the person and generally discourage them from continuing in their adventure. The waves have come and hit as hard as they could, but they have left the music industry with new opportunities and especially more independence for the indie artists. The pandemic was an era where no one was reliable enough, a time when even big record labels shook and employees had to go home, a time when people realized how important it is for them to be self-reliant. It was indeed a time to strengthen the independent. Indie artists and bands had to resort to alternative means of reaching their audience and selling their music without concerts, shows, or bars. Prior to the pandemic, the digital world offered many opportunities which had not been realized by musicians. However, the eradication of the basic channels drove many artists to the doors of digital media and tools. Starting from the production of music to promotion and marketing, most indie artists had to learn to do these things without stepping out of their home or violating the quarantine. Therefore, independent artists now have opportunities and chances to make, promote, and market their music without feeling the void of a record label. As indie artists, here are some basic steps you can take to produce, promote, and market your music. 1. Treat your room for recording. Room treatment in any capacity is not easy. Although with just a bit of room treatment, your reasonable stuff sound will sound phenomenal. Room treatment, particularly in home studios, is fundamental, regardless of what type of music production it will be used for. Even if you never plan on removing your earphones while creating, you should furnish a portion of your workspace to accomplish quality sounds. For vocals, in a pinch, you can get the enclosure that folds over a mic stand. However, the ideal situation would be treating committed areas of a space for recording. If at all possible, consider committing a portion of your room or home to a recording space. One option is to transform a storeroom into studio. However, a better option would be using a bigger, multi-use space, as stores are difficult to clean. It's simpler to accomplish apparent equilibrium in a section of your multi-purpose room, in all honesty. How to approach treating your space for vocal production purposes depends on its shape, the materials of development, and your spending plan. There is no set arrangement I can give, but recommend that you do explore all your options. Numerous organizations, as GIK, offer free guidance on the best way to approach treating a room on any spending plan. Different resources, such as this paper, can be useful. Truly, you should treat your space for mixing purposes also. Doing so goes a long way to getting mixing right. Treatment of room for the two situations, recording and mixing, is fundamental because there's nothing of the sort as a demo any longer. With contracting financial plans, any genuine artist must create music that would be generally accepted. The better treated your room is for recording, the better your music sounds. 2. Invest in a solid mic chain. While you can work all your magic in the mixing process, it helps to have a good mic chain that will embrace life in your sound in transit, if you hope to make your music sound its best. It might require a long time to save up for great recording gear, yet even one channel merits the cost. What's more, fortunately for you, numerous interfaces in the sub-$1,000 territory sound incredible. If you're working at test rates at or under 48 kHz, Spire can go about as one such interface, since its preamps were made by Grace Design, a maker of superior grade, straightforward preamps. If you don't have the desire to dish out for vintage stuff or clones thereof, go for perfect and straightforward. You can vibe the sound later on with all Bragg immersion settings. Mic chains are vital. It's the reason I emphasize them first. However, you also need 2 or 3 extraordinary workhorse amplifiers. I'd say 2 would get the job done. If vocals and an intermittent acoustic instrument get through your space, a dynamic mic and an extraordinary huge diaphragm condenser will work well for you. 3. Expel all noisy equipment to a distant spot. Noise is a problematic issue for recording. It can emerge out of any place in the home-based production studio. Do you live off a roundabout? Do you have flatmates? I did, and they opened doors on some wrong occasions. Air conditioners, refrigerators, hard drives, these potential sound makers are within your control. Turn off the AC anytime you record. If the fridge can be heard while recording, turn it off for the meantime. Set your hard drives far away from the chronicle area and outside of the microphone's pickup design. On the off chance that they're humming sufficiently loud enough to get through your account, pack them in the box. Do what you can to remove unessential sound in the process of recording, and you will not need to stress over noise removal later on. 4. Have 2 sets of closed-back headphones. This tip applies to individuals who have just one space for recording and mixing. You may adore your open-backed Grado, Sennheiser, or Audez headsets for creating. Open-sponsored earphones do give you a sound that closed-back headsets cannot imitate. However, it's an ideal opportunity to take care of those cracked headphones when you're recording. Once more, you need your sound to sound as perfect as could be expected, and that implies as little earphone seep as you can get. With that in mind, it is certainly justified to have various sets of shut-back earphones, one for you and one for your artists. They don't need to sound as stunning as your mixing earphones, they just need to be sufficiently great enough to give the vocalist a moving image of the voice. At any rate, one set ought to be adequately level to trust while recording and detailed enough to uncover issues should they come up. That pair should be on your ears. Acclimate yourself with that pair by tuning in all your number 1 records and logging any distinctions you notice getting through the earphones. 5. Correspond the meters to your ears. When recording, it's advisable to have meters available to give you visual signs, showing you signal strength or whether the signal has cut. Your preamp, interface, or converter generally gives some metering. You can generally utilize a module inside your DAW, Digital Audio Workshop, something like Insight 2. Still, more essentially, you want to figure out how to correspond any meter with what your ear hears as you record. Mics and preamps will, in general, have sweet spots, regions where the sound is agreeably rich and fulfilling. Associate these oral sweet spots with the visual pointers of your metering. At the point when you're setting up the mic on the vocalist or the instrumentalist, observe the meter perusing when you genuinely hear the juice, and as you record, watch the meters to ensure you're still in that zone. If you discover the artist is cresting close to the sweet spot, you may need to bargain and turn down or utilize a compressor in your chain. Like a few pieces in the FMR series, some compressors are both unimaginably straightforward and very modest. 6. Learn some basic techniques of vocal mic. Typical microphone placement for an artist means leaving between 6 to 12 inches of space between your mouth and your capsule. Except if you have a great room or are attempting to catch a particular impact, go for cardioid in most vocal recording situations. You may need to switch the microphone forward or farther depending on a few factors. If you'd prefer to utilize the nearness impact to get all the more low-mid range in the sign, draw the vocalist nearer to the mic. If the room sounds incredible and you need its quality to come through in the account, have a go at moving the vocalist farther away. However, hang on. What is the vicinity impact? This happens in a lot of microphone, and it occurs as you draw the mic nearer to the capsule and you the more low mid-range in the sign. It may be used or it appears to hamper for your future advantage. Test until you accomplish the fitting completion. Know about the microphone's point. On a cardioid mic, if you point the case, so the artist is singing to some degree slantingly into it, you can limit sibilance, which will work well for you in the blend. Additionally, I've discovered that playing with the mic's stature can enormously affect the vocalist's presentation. Excessively low, and the artist wraps up the neck, crushing the sound and the harmonies. Somewhat higher than dead capsule makes the artist slant up a piece, which prolongs the neck and may damage the clear tone. 7. Know fundamentals of acoustic guitar microphone. Other than vocals, the most well-known recordable instrument you will use is presumably the acoustic guitar. It is one of your best interests to figure out how to mic one. Here's a simple, straightforward approach to mic an acoustic. 1. Point the capsule where the neck meets the body, about a foot away from the instrument, plus or minus. This will act as your point of convergence in adjusting the tone. 2. Point capsule somewhat toward the body and you'll get a boomier tone. 3. Direct the capsule marginally toward the neck and you'll hear a more slender sound with a powerful presence. Straight on is also good. Balance the tone for your music. At that point, you can begin recording. The recording process. Audio recording clarified in the early days of the music recording. The process was a lot less difficult than it is today. Whole exhibitions were recorded in single takes with only 1 or 2 mics. Today, however, we utilize a more refined interaction known as multi-track recording, where each instrument is recorded independently and consolidated later in a mix. This offers 2 big benefits. It permits designers to form and shape the sound of each instrument independently of the others. Additionally, it permits each instrument in a melody to be recorded each in turn. This new strategy implies that one person can now do alone what used to require a whole group of designers and artists. While the real strides in the process change from one designer to another, here are some overall rules of how it functions. 1. Create a track to follow. The initial step is making some sort of guide for different instruments to track. A great many people utilize a basic snap metronome to set a beat. As not all artists can follow clicks, you could also utilize a pre-recorded drum circle. Furthermore, since not all melodies have consistent rhythms, a third technique is to make a scratch track. An instrument or gathering of instruments is recorded as the guide, at that point overdubbed each in turn until the first can be erased or scratched. 2. Record the rhythm section. As any musician knows, the rhythm section is the establishment of any melody. When bands play together, everybody follows the drums, bass. It only makes sense that these be the primary instruments you ordinarily record. In songs that need drums, bass, another rhythmic instrument like an acoustic guitar can be utilized. 3. Record the harmonies. Next, whenever you've made a decent foundation, it's an ideal opportunity to add to it by making a harmonious structure. Depending on the music, this could mean adding rhythm guitar, piano, synths, horns, and so on. With a fundamental harmony movement currently set up, next it's an ideal opportunity to 4. Record the melodies. Since most songs utilize a mix of instruments to frame the music, it bodes well that whichever ones are generally prevailing, typically lead vocals, lead guitar, be the ones you record first. At that point, you can fill in the loops with every one of the supporting verses. From that point forward, all that is left is to put the final details on your melody. After is when you add every one of those little subtleties that add tone and flair to the primary tracks. Stage 2. The editing process. Now that you have wrapped up recording your tracks, it's an ideal opportunity to tidy them up. Since regardless of how cautious you were in the last advance, there will consistently be some slip-ups that can and ought to be fixed. With the astonishing editing apparatuses now accessible in the DAWs of today, editing is comprised of 5 regular tasks: arrangement, comping, noise reduction, time editing, pitch editing. In the next course of action, you investigate all you've done to assess what works and what doesn't. For instance, you could erase whole tracks that don't add value, cut out sections of tracks that mess the blend, move a segment to another piece of music, erase whole areas of the song altogether. Critically, you think about the copy of each track and select the best one. If you like, you can even choose the best expressions from each take and consolidate them all into one. With noise decrease, you cut all sounds previously, after, and in the middle of each part of the sound where the instrument is playing. This means removing background voices, amp hissing, footsteps, chair squeaks, breaths, or just dead air. To lessen noise further, you can add a high-pass channel underneath the low recurrence scope of non-bass instruments to eliminate thundering sounds. With time altering, you can fix strange notes, utilizing one of two strategies. The first is the reorder technique, which functions admirably on percussive instruments. The other is the time-stretching method, which functions admirably on practically all instruments. You can move any sharp note back on pitch with pitch altering, utilizing auto-tune, or any comparable programming. Typically, it's utilized on vocals, yet it does work well on most melodic instruments. Stage 3. The mixing process. Now let's take a look at audio mixing. Once the tracks are masterminded precisely as you like, the next objective is to make them mix as one strong unit. While mixing is a work of art in itself and should be possible from various perspectives, there are proven principal undertakings that everyone does. Common examples include adjusting faders, which is done so that no instrument sounds too boisterous or delicate to others; panning, which gives each instrument its own space in the sound system picture, similar as every performer has his own space in front of an audience; equalization, which makes an exceptional space in the recurrence range for each instrument, with the goal that no two sounds vie for a similar band of frequencies; compression, which levels out the unique scope of an instrument so each note is heard obviously, and the blend sounds stronger all in all; reverb, which makes three-dimensional space for the blend, adding a feeling of profundity and binding together the instruments under one room sound; automation, which permits you to change settings at various focuses in tune to give your blend a feeling of development. Whenever you have utilized these devices to make your blend and it sounds extraordinary, it is at long last time for the last part of this process. Stage 4. The mastering process. Before your melody is fit to be dominated, all tracks should be re-recorded down to a solitary sound system document, or bounced, as it's usually known. Whenever that is done, different dominating strategies are utilized to put the final details on your song so that it sounds far superior. Regular strategies include maximizing loudness, through additional pressure and restricting, so the normal sine level over the long run is just about as high as could be expected without forfeiting many elements. Balancing frequencies. Through additional EQ, a process is known as multi-band pressure, which can pack singular recurrence groups independently from the remainder of the range. Stereo widening, with a unique module intended to add an extra feeling of width to the higher frequencies in your blend. When all that sounds great, the track is changed over to its suitable example rate bit profundity. For instance, CD sound is 44.1 kHz per 16 bits. Chapter 6. Independent Music Promotion. Promoting your music. Making incredible music should be your primary interest. Even with this as your main focus, if your track, EP, or album isn't elegantly composed, tight instrumentally, and expertly created, you'll have a hard time being successful. We should take a look at the ideal approaches to advance your music freely in the modern music scene. Build a website and mailing list. Making a smooth, proficient site as a base for your online presence is essential. However, of more significance is building a huge and devoted mailing list. Your site should incorporate connections to your music, profiles, pictures, and event dates, yet also make a point to incorporate a mailing list join structure. Email promoting offers direct admittance to the inboxes of individuals destined to draw in with your music. Suppose a fan sends you an email address. In that case, they have listened to you, and an email sent directly to their inbox about your last delivery or upcoming tour is far more likely to further engage them than a public address with a limited scope made on stage. Develop an engaging social presence. The limited time span of social media is no mystery. Creating and keeping a steady, fascinating, and engaging presence across Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and surprisingly more subtle stages like Snapchat is fundamental. Additionally, attempt to keep your profile handles predictable to make things simpler for individuals looking for you on the web. There's a wide range of thought on the best way to deal with your social media channels, and things are continually changing across each stage. Glance through a portion of these accommodating resources for more information on the best way to run and benefit as much as possible from your social media presence. Get playlisted. Streaming and playlisting are things that cannot be overlooked. Playlists across Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, and other streaming services arrive at countless audience members worldwide, resulting in billions of streams. This provides a chance to bring in new fans and puts money in your pocket. While getting your music set on curated playlists is incredible for mindfulness and believability, being put on algorithmic playlists like Discover Weekly can significantly affect your stream check, so it merits pursuing all prospects. Get press and blog coverage. On the off chance that music distributions include your music, regardless of whether that is standard mags or specialty websites and webzines, those arrangements can help construct promotion and give you the certifications to take your music vocation up a level. Recruiting an expert in public relations to promote your music is the ideal approach to get extraordinary publicity. However, this is not generally feasible for most artists working with a restricted budget. Do-it-yourself PR is a possibility for artists without a large enough financial plan to hire a public relations firm. Regardless of the path taken, blogging and writing in the correct way is important. First and foremost, you'll need to make an electronic public statement. This ought to contain all the fundamental information about you and your music. The following pages offer guidance for artists who need to assume control over PR. Music videos. An energizing, fascinating, and unique music video can become a web sensation on the web, regardless of whether the track is certifiably not a hit. Try not to be hesitant to consider new ideas regarding making a video for your most recent song. Consider the sort of recordings from acts like OK Go and Childish Gambino that have exploded because of online footing. They have shown something remarkable and interesting about them, regardless of whatever their message was. Find a way to be interesting and engaging. Doing so can help to create a standard music video or live execution-based visuals. Contributing ideas, time, and energy to your recordings have the potential to produce gigantic benefits. Encircle yourself with a strong team. Although you may prefer the solitary individual way to deal with advancing your music, there can be colossal advantages to encircling yourself with an incredible group of similar individuals. Imagine that you have a group of associated people who are energetic about your music, all working towards your success. It only makes sense that your opportunities for achievement will increase. If you can assemble a group of people who will help you for no charge or for a cut of possible profit, fantastic. At some point, though, you will need to engage some sort of expert to help give you the edge in the serious music market. Regardless of whether that is a PR individual or an advertiser booker, there's nothing wrong with having help. It is also a smart move to get yourself an extraordinary manager. Be sure that they are energetic about your music and have confidence in you as an artist. A manager who will exceed all expectations for you is extremely valuable. Know your audience and spotlight your specialty. Understanding who your audience is and spotlighting your specialty can have a huge influence on where and to whom you sell your songs. Flourishing music subcultures exist across all corners of the world, some enormous and rambling, some little and committed. Discovering, knowing, and promoting your melodic specialty is vital to your limited time crusade. It may sound self-evident, but be a part of the scene of your genre of music. If you are a metal band, play metal scenes, join a local metal area, and win metal fans. If you are a rapper, discover rap settings, join rap networks, and win rap fans. However, specialties are not constantly characterized by type. If your music has a broader allure, start locally. Individuals love to see an artist from their area succeed. Exploit this attitude and develop your fan base close to home before growing broadly or even around the world. Play live regularly. This is substantially more troublesome in the COVID-19 period, yet gigs and tours offer a priceless interface with fans. Get booked at close-by settings or play magnificent sets for neighborhood music fans, and you will rapidly build up a solid, new fan base. Remember, you need to leave an impression, so make sure to stand out. Once you have established yourself in your vicinity, you can build on this and spread out to new music scenes, moving from city to city and eventually from country to country. If this sounds excessively simple and streamlined, that's because it is. Touring and playing gigs after a long time after night is difficult to work, yet if you have an incredible live show, the rewards will come easily. Independent music marketing. Get copyright, web page marketing, get into streaming sites, shows and concerts. How to sell music as an independent artist. An extraordinary amount of new content is passed on to streaming services every day. Being promoted on them determines which new songs are affiliated with a community of individuals. To get your music to your waiting audience, you need to get inventive with showcasing. If you cannot successfully progress your music, these 7 support programs will help you get started. Build your audience. To capitalize on your advancement endeavors, you need to discover who your fans are. Understanding details like where your audience is based and how old they are can help you fabricate a promoting technique that precisely contacts them. Today, everything from customized band sites to music streaming artist accounts offer scientific data to assist you with learning about your fans. Some sites even offer details, such as when fans first discovered your music online and on through which platforms or search keywords. Understand these details and you can get to know your followers. No matter how amazing your music sounds, you'll never progress as a performer without an audience. Finding your fans and interacting with them allows you to share your music with a more extensive audience. Many venues will actually need you to have a small audience they book you for a gig. Team up with different artists. Building your fan base makes it simpler to create a verbal promotion for your music and attract individuals to your live shows. You can increase your fan base by performing as a guest artist with more well-known groups and artists, or filling in as an initial act at their live shows. Approach bloggers. Pay for a PR radio campaign. Another approach that musicians can take to further themselves is to put money into promoting their music. Paying others to get your songs on the radio, playlists, blogs, and news channels can have positive results, but to do so in an ongoing basis is expensive. The amount of money you spend will depend on your budget and the size of the audience you hope to reach. It is rare to see substantial success before spending a vast quantity of money. However, once the music is heard by radio broadcasters, the money has usually been spent wisely. One option to help with cash flow is to plan for the long term and put aside money each month. As an example, if each person in a band puts away $20 a month for promotion, at the end of the year there could be close to $1,000. This will allow a band to fund a big promotional mail-out themselves. Make a list of schools, local radio stations, and magazines that are music-orientated and send them copies of your album. Your music will be heard, and hopefully success will follow. Develop your fan base online by working with music bloggers. Do extensive research to discover bloggers and writers who focus on your niche or artists in your neighborhood scene. Consider fascinating points that you and your music can give them, and send a customized pitch email. Reach out to influencers. If you follow any nearby music influencers via social media, send them an immediate message and request that they cover you or your band. Similarly, as with bloggers, make yourself interesting. Most influencers pick what to post dependent on the number of preferences they will get, so make sure to present them with your best material. Set up an artist website. Create and monetize your website for artists. A band's website allows them to showcase their music and keep in touch with new supporters. While these things do happen on social media, sites such as Facebook and Twitter constantly decrease the influence of artists, reducing their voices and ability to reach their audience. To reach your fans, you ordinarily need to pay for it. With your site, you have the ability to contact audiences. You also have an opportunity to deliver your message and character on your terms. New fans are likely to connect with the story you tell through your site instead of a tasteless Twitter or Facebook profile. Band sites additionally give income streams to artists that social media sites do not. Regardless of whether you're now utilizing customary advancement strategies to advertise your music, like posting flyers in bars and music settings or selling CDs and other products, making a music site is a necessity. If somebody finds your flyer at their neighborhood music store, Quite possibly they will look you up on the web. Your site should be designed to run on smartphones. If someone hears your music in a bar or a dance club and hops on their telephone to discover it, they need to have the option to explore your site easily. Consistent Contact offers a web designer service for artists, just as Logo Maker provides something eye-catching to put on your site and product. Choose your domain name. Regardless of whether you are an independent artist or a band, your domain address ought to be closely derived from your real name. This makes it easy for fans to find you online. For instance, if you are an artist named Jill Sanders, your site ought to be jillsanders.com or some variety of it. When setting up your site, the product you're utilizing should be able to verify whether the domain name is accessible. If not, you just might need to pick a substitute choice. For example, jillsandersmusic.com or jillsanderssings.com. Optimize your website. While you need your site to stand out, it is also critical to make it practical and easy to understand. An overplanned site that is difficult to explore may drive your fans away. It should not be difficult to track down your live show plans, connections to purchase or transfer your music, and ways to purchase your product. Highlights like slideshows on the landing page can assist your site with being dynamic, while keeping up natural usefulness. Use social media platforms. When figuring out how to advertise music, social media shouldn't be disregarded. Besides live gigs, social media is perhaps the best tool for building and drawing in a group of people. Numerous contemporary artists have assembled their audiences via social media before being endorsed to a huge record label. Social media allows you to assemble a group of people beyond your present town or city. Social media music promoting systems. Social media stages are loaded with issues, and it's becoming increasingly hard to arrive at fans through them. However, promoting systems for performers are tragically significantly less effective without them. Take Instagram, for instance. Interfacing with accounts related to individuals who know, advance, and make your music style can have new implications for your work. They have clubs, labels, and lovers of music. Facebook is the equivalent. Suppose you wish to share the news of another distribution or people that will feature in your programs. In that case, social media can be a way to reach whoever loves your music, as well as for personally reaching out to specific people. Paid advertisements on these stages are the most effortless methods of achieving this. However, always investigate different avenues like hashtags, meetup gatherings, Reddit strings, and Facebook groups in touring areas to help get you that publicity for free. Furthermore, always remember to connect with different groups, similar to your own, through their social channels. A smidgen of companion making and cross-advancement can go far. Do live streams. Instagram and Facebook allow you to go live with your recordings. Take advantage of this opportunity for potential fans to hear your music. Numerous individuals go to social media to view the live shows of their number one artists. In case you are chipping away at new music, share portions of the process with your fans, or treat them to a live show or two. Focus on fan engagement. Another advantage of social media is that it allows artists to interface straightforwardly with their fans. A decent social media feed ought to be engaging and authentic. You might be enticed to transform your social media accounts into a bulletin for your music. While social stages can help advance your shows and collections, you can assemble your audience by sharing other substance, like music from different groups you like, or conversations about themes that move your fans. Standard commitment assists with building your audience. Arising stages like TikTok help live transfers or brief recordings and let you draw in your audience. You can utilize Instagram stories and Twitter fleets to share bits of your music or your day to help build your audience. Submit your music to streaming services. The vast majority of people know about the huge real-time features like Spotify and Apple Music. However, you also need to have a presence on YouTube and SoundCloud. Send your music to sites, playlists, and press outlets. There's no way to avoid how pitching one's music can be one of the most unpleasant parts of being a performer. If public criticism does occur, take the time to investigate it and release a public statement. Have someone you trust review it. Get in touch with the individual who wrote the criticisms and try to understand what went wrong. It can sound shattering initially, but it is 100% essential to connect with new people, even those who are critical of your work. This is the only way to build momentum from outside outlets around your songs. It can be a test if the big deliveries and playlists show you. There is a process to see your songs on Spotify playlists, for starters, but remember to start small and move up gradually. This will result in a decent and satisfying approach when pitching music. This is not necessary in small online reviews and playlists, though. Here, force doesn't turn up all of a sudden. It begins with 2 or 3 individuals turning out to be steadfast promoters for your music before developing into something more significant. Spotify. You need a wholesaler to get music on Spotify. Record organizations handle this progression for their artists. However, if you're free, you will have to deal with this on your own. Spotify Music works with an assortment of merchants, and you will likely need to pay an expense or commission. As Spotify includes installments of royalty charges and permitting, you need an expert in the business to iron out the legitimate subtleties. Spotify is particular about what winds up playing on it. The majority of the music on the application is expertly delivered. Show your songs to experts before you begin approaching them to ensure it sounds the best. YouTube. This is perhaps the most open stage for artists who don't have a merchant. Anyone can make a YouTube channel, and recordings do not need to be expertly made. Make sure you post regularly and follow the inquiry to build your audience via YouTube. Keep track of which posts have the best prospects and maintenance. How to showcase music. YouTube. While promoting your recordings, use catchphrases and labels in the depiction to help individuals discover you. Your video depictions help the algorithms discover your recordings and advertise them to viewers in your intended interest group. Apple Music. Apple Music offers an assortment of analytics and different instruments to help you track your range and see which of your songs are reverberating successfully with your audience. Like Spotify, this stage requires a wholesaler for the eminences and authorizing charges. Apple is also specific about which artists that are included on its streaming stage. Thus, it is essential to have music that sounds proficient and is created well. SoundCloud. Artists use SoundCloud to transfer and advance their music. To effectively utilize your SoundCloud record and gain supporters, engage the same procedures you would execute on YouTube. Ensure that you are doing things such as posting routinely and adding catchphrases and labels to your posts. Additionally, SoundCloud allows you to guide your fans to purchase your songs. You can also encourage fans to impart your music to others. This stage is truly outstanding for the individuals who do not employ a wholesaler or need to convey music themselves. Conclusion. Being successful in the music industry depends mostly on the kind of external and internal support an artist gets. This is why artists with record labels rise and succeed easier and quicker than independent artists. Based on experience, artists with record labels are provided with and take advantage of opportunities that are not available to the independent artist. This is why independent artists have always had to work twice as hard as signed artists to get the audience's attention and whatever other benefits accompany the fame. Surviving as an indie artist in a world ruled and dominated by big record labels is similar to swimming against the tide. The situation of things pre-COVID-19 and throughout the pandemic have driven most indie artists to the edge. From facing the prejudice of being a loser to the pain of being alone and then having to bear the huge financial burdens all on their own, the chance of an indie artist surviving and being successful is very slim. The tides, the people, the fame, and the budget all favor artists whose source of funds and motivation are big record label bosses and colleagues. However, with dedication and relevant knowledge, the indie artist can operate on level ground with the signed artist. Paying attention to the global trend in music, one would realize that many indie artists, such as Tatiana Marianos and Kid Cudi, have made great waves in the musical realm without being signed into any record label. That is the power of global evolution and musical evolution. As an aspiring musician or an upcoming artist, whether in Canada or any other part of the world, being an indie artist is not a lost cause. It is a true path to definite independence in the musical career space. Technology has come a long way to bridge the gap between the artist and the audience. It has cut the fold between the artist and their pay. In fact, based on the new situation of things in the music industry, record labels are losing a great deal of professional, talented, and skilled members. These days, everyone wants to achieve their financial freedom and reach their desires by being the best at whatever they do. These are limitations that record labels would most definitely pose to their signed artists. As an indie artist, you don't have to worry about mentorship and fund support provided within record labels. Once an artist can focus on self and skill development, such an artist is as big as a record label. In this book's chapters, we have explained what it means to be an indie artist and how an independent artist can excel. Hence, you can consider it your guide as you begin your path towards success in your chosen career in music. Simply by starting with a bass guitar, a portable keyboard, a simple home studio, or even a mere recording application on your mobile phone, an artist can be made and raised to the stars. It is an era of independence and a time for self-built glory. Your chance is here. Take it. This has been The Dark Side of Indie Survival, written by Jason R. Martin, narrated by Rory Young.